Welcome back to some Animal Crossing New Horizons, this time Thumbnail art edition. So I want to go just like straight out of the gates, just being like, I'm so sorry this took so long. I did not realise that, you know, when I was pushing this back and when I was delaying things, that it would end up being like 100 days or so until I finally actually finish a thumbnail art. But sometimes life gets busy, sometimes life gets in the way, and sometimes you miss a deadline and then continuously push it back anyway. Nonetheless, we are here now, so I hope you're at least excited to see what the thumbnail art is. But yeah, I suppose if you're new here, then you might not know that I often give commentary over the Animal Crossing thumbnail art to just sort of illuminate the process. I don't think there's anything particularly crazy in this one, so you know, there's nothing like particularly unique or defining, that I should say. But yeah, so the concept for this thumbnail art, at least the concept of all the thumbnail arts now, is a sort of well, probably based around like an NPC in Animal Crossing themselves. Okay, so just to give a high level overview, like what I just did, like a rough sketch before, like all the characters, like blocking out roughly where they should go, and now I'm doing a refined sketch, so the line art I actually draw will be accurate. Yeah, so I wanted to basically incorporate concepts to do with some of the NPCs in Animal Crossing, and I was going back and forth between a few of them, but in this case I decided about what's most iconic to New Horizons, like what's most definitively New Horizons, and it's Dodo Airlines, or Dodo Airways, I'm not actually sure what it's called now, with Orville and Wilbur. So I got to thinking, basically being like, what do I want to do? I want to do something with a plane. I mean, the initial idea was just like something in a plane, and I was like, that's a bit boring, and plus the seaplane's there's no way the seaplane makes sense to hold all these people. So then like the concept sort of shifted to something which is like an anime, like the way I described it in my head was like an anime, I'm not sure if splash art is the right word, like promotional art, you know, where it's like, oh, new anime releasing this fall or something, and then it would just like show this image or something, which is like not something which happens at all during like the anime or the world or anything. It doesn't need to make sense, it's just some sort of dramatic thing showing off all the characters who are in it, and in this case they're sort of like tumbling about in the sky, I don't know, from a plane or something. I would say that of course no animals or no villagers were harmed in the making of this thumbnail art because it's all fictional anyway. It's very much, the way I draw thumbnail arts are very much sort of posed images, almost like if it's like a photo shoot or something. So, you know, this is probably all like green screened in reality or whatnot, but anywho, there's a concept. It's just like in the air, it's sort of like weird, like anime promotional art or something. You look at this and you'd be like, oh yeah, you can see this is totally like like a show about like hijinks between like an airline crew or something. So that's the concept. Everything's tumbling about, so everyone's in like weird positions, everyone's like falling about, rotated randomly, and I thought it gives it like a very sort of dynamic feel compared to the previous Animal Crossing ones, which are much more focusing on like a sort of actual Animal Crossing sort of cozy feel, right? So everyone is being given some sort of airline outfit, you know, either as a steward or like a captain, or I don't know. Basically, it was a little bit difficult trying to think of 10 like uniforms. I tried to give each of the villagers something unique, so it's like they have their own uniform. But yeah, it's a little bit difficult. Just starting off with Dee, of course, she's just got like a air stewardess sort of uniform. It's not really like an air stewardess uniform I don't think you would see in real life. It's sort of like inspired by it, but then it's also like made into like a costume, is what I'd say. So she's got like a sort of dressy coat thing on. I don't know, it's a very sort of like feminine outfit, etc, etc. Oh, the hearts, just because, I don't know, hearts is like a recurring motif, I suppose, with Dee. Yeah, so it's obviously like a fictional uniform. It's not one you would ever see. Oh yeah, I do apologise, especially during a lineup. There's going to be a lot of like rotating a canvas. I try and keep it like sort of even keel most of the time, but it's very difficult to draw like some of lines at some angles. Seaplanes just here, Orville and Wilbur. There's nothing particularly crazy or non-standard with them. I just basically draw them as they are. Vivian also having another sort of like air stewardess, hostess outfit. This one's a lot much more sort of like fashion forward, because in my mind Vivian is like the fashion aunt, I suppose, of Fawnhollow. Rowan, I'm not really sure what like the motivation was with Rowan's. I think by the time I was like sketching Rowan's, I was like, I just need something at this point. So I was like, he would have something much more like bold, daring, or whatever. You know, he's loosened that tie, roll up the sleeves. He's not going to care so much about uniform. So Phoebe and Faunas are very much sort of like this, the driving force behind the sort of like anime feel, you know. You can look at this and you're like, oh, it's very sort of like Kimi no Na wa Your Name-esque, isn't it? The sort of like fated connection in the sky or whatever. The sort of drama I think is fun with these two, and I don't really know what they're wearing, to be honest. Like, I mean, I guess Phoebe's obviously like a pilot, and then Fawn is just wearing some sort of like formal clothing, I don't know. Biscuit is, again, I don't think you would see this as like an air steward sort of outfit, but it's just sort of fun to fit his personality, and I like the idea of him being sort of like Mary Poppins with like an umbrella. Audie's sort of meant to be like more of like a mechanic uniform, with like a jumpsuit or something, although I guess a mechanic would probably wear like a full length jumpsuit rather than just a short one. And Lily is, I don't really know at this point, like I was sort of like reaching for like actual uniforms, but I guess she's meant to be like an air traffic controller or something. I don't know if that particularly has a uniform or whatever. Raymond being another sort of like air steward, this or, well, actually no, maybe it's a bit of a pilot. It's sort of like a mix of the two, maybe like a co-pilot or something. Nah, I think he's more of like an air steward or something, but like a much more of the fancier ones, like we have on like British Airways or something. Amelia, I don't know. Ambiguous job title with like Fauna as well. Maybe they've got some sort of like technician role, and then Apollo's an actual like pilot as well. So I guess in this plane, Apollo and Phoebe are the actual pilots, and then we have like air stewards of Dee, Vivian, Raymond, Biscuit, and then we have like Lily and Audie as like at the airport on ground control or something, and then Fauna, I guess Fauna and Mila would also be stewards. I don't know. Let's not think too much of my vlog. I was basically just making up different uniforms for each of them. So everything so far has been relatively standard. I start off with a rough sketch, and then I did like a much more refined sketch, and then I do the line art. Refined sketch is important just because it's a lot easier to jump back and forth between them. Like if you do like line art directly from rough sketch, it's a bit hard to know exactly what's going on. But now I'm just sort of like colouring everything in. There'll be a huge amount of jumping back and forth, so I do apologise for that. But it's relatively standard, I would say. Like body colours, or of course, all will match the given colours that the Animal Crossing villages already have. You know, it's easy to not have to think of palettes in the first place, and then the colouring of a uniform will just sort of match. I do try and match, like I associate each of my villages with a colour, which you'll see more evidently later on as well. So they sort of match, but I do go back and sort of change the colours in a bit, I think, because most of the uniforms are leaning kind of like cool colours, but then we had like Audie and Raymond both with like very sort of warm colours, with the yellows and reds. So I was just like, okay, let's try and like skew this all a bit cool. Let's like actually have some thematic cohesion with that. I think Raymond's does end up still like kind of warmish compared to the rest of everyone, but you know, it makes it distinct, it makes it unique, so who am I to say no to it? So I'm doing this like mouth clicky thing, which I was really conscious of last year. I was doing it all the time, and I was like, that's really annoying, stop that. So yeah, nothing crazy here with the colouring. The colours just sort of skew in the direction of their sort of like image color, if anything. You might have saw a flash of green. That green was not a serious green for actually coloring Vivians. It's just oftentimes when you're coloring and the colors are a bit like closer together, or if it's really too bright, I will use like just a obtrusively like bright color to be like, hey, okay, what does this actually look like? So I can actually see it. So that bright neon green pops compared to the purple, so I can actually see like what is actually being coloured in. So yeah, at this point, just drawing Orville and Wilbur. You'll see I like duplicate the window layer as well to put an overlay on top to not have to think about like what translucency level things should be at. And then I do a ground reveal of everything's actually upside down. Compared to like where reality is, and this background is actually very genuinely straightforward compared to the other ones. The other ones I all had to be in like natural scenes where I was drawing like a load of trees and stuff, and honestly drawing trees and loads of like nature things is fun but also takes a long time. This one just being open sky just means I had to draw a load of clouds, and I wanted to give a sensation of course everything sort of like tumbling about. This feels like a sort of silly posed photo, so I was just like, okay, what things might you find on a plane, and they'd be like falling out about the place around everyone. So yeah, getting onto the shading, I would say the shading was actually like super confusing in this one, because the lighting is sort of like directly behind everyone, which I guess in reality would give everyone like a very intense sort of rim light and cast everyone very deeply into shadows. And as I was doing that for like D and like the others, I was like, this doesn't look good, mainly because like there's a huge shadows cast across like everyone's face, which makes sense of course physically, but it's not what I want. So you can see I very much cheat with the shadows here, but the light source exposes more of the people rather than just being so directly like behind and off to the side. Just because it looks better, and just full stop. I mean, you can cheat with shadows, it doesn't really matter that much. And also a lot of shadows don't necessarily make sense. Like, you might look at it and be like, that part wouldn't be illuminated up from where the angle of the shadows are. The answer is just because, again, I thought it looked better, or sometimes I just got confused. It's very confusing, some of the angles they were being drawn at, to try and figure out, like, this is a very non-standard angle, to try and figure out where and who and what was being lit up exactly. So I did a first pass with the regular shadows. These are like big, like dark areas. You can actually see I start by filling everything in with the shadows and then removing what is actually lit up. And then I'm now going in with a bit of a darker colour. Like the first one was, I think, a bit of a bluey one. This one's now a bit sort of green, just to give the sort of overall the overall like palette to this art. With the darker shadows, just to give some depth to some of the shadows as well. Now I'm going in with the highlights. I was considering doing like much more complex highlighting or that sort of thing, but really the only important thing is that we sort of like specular rough highlights in the areas pointing towards the sun, and then like we sort of like slightly stronger rim highlights. I don't want to make it like too strong, like rim highlights like stand out too much, because I feel like the shadows are doing a lot of work here. You might be like, what are you doing here? Basically, this is the thing I started doing in the last thumbnail art, where I coloured them all in and gave them a glow based off their image colour. Here I'm also just like colouring of a line art based off their image colour as well. But they all just get like a little bit of a glow to sort of unify that thematic. I think I also tried to add in some like really tiny items falling in, but I just like didn't like how it looked in the end. So yeah, I mean, basically a super rapid at the end, just sort of like finishing touches. There's like a gradient map in there to try and sort of unify this sort of greenish yellowy colour, sort of like morning vibes and colours, despite the fact that it's not quite really morning. I guess the sun's far too high in the air for that. But yeah, here we go. That's like the general concept of thumbnail art. Finally done. Probably by the time you see this uploaded, it won't have been. It would only be today's episode, which actually has the new thumbnail art. All the previous ones I have not converted yet, I'd imagine. Mainly because I'm also not going to be here on the day it's uploaded. So I won't have time to convert them. But thank you, I suppose, for being with me on this journey for Animal Crossing and all these years. Year 5, it's crazy that we've been doing it for so long. Again, I apologise how long you had to wait. But until, I suppose, next time, I hope we can see each other again. So until next time, bye-bye for now.